Salutations, and welcome to the first of the Hachigoku design diaries for the Hachigoku RPG. Today I just want to talk about something very simple in mechanics. A lot of people don't give you the behind the scenes of why and how they develop mechanics for role-playing games, and I want to work on that. So we're going to talk about the engine for the game, what I'm going to call, tentatively, the bonsai system. And it's just essentially how you roll dice. Every role-playing game, you're going to roll dice, right? Now you're going to grab, die 20s, die 4s, die 6s, die 10s, all that kinds. Die 10s are my favorite. Now, I've already admitted up front, been very public about it, Hachigoku as a spiritual successor to the Legend of the Five Rings game, which is no longer being published, sadly. That does not mean that this is just some carbon copy of Legend of the Five Rings, by any means. But I always did like the use of die 10s as a major resolution mechanic. Now, you can grab different sizes. You can grab a big one. You can grab a little one. I prefer just kind of a normal-sized one. That's fine. Now, rolling dice is, of course, in Hachigoku, your basic means of task resolution. It should not be confused with the only means of task resolution. Rolling dice means that something has happened. You are going to take a risk. You are going to do something that advances the plot or the story. You are going to do something that is an opportunity. That's what they represent. Advancements, risks, opportunity. You don't roll to walk down the street. You don't roll just to draw your sword, unless you mean to hit someone with it at the same time. And you don't roll all the time during combat, right, for every single little eye twitch you make. It's assumed that in combat you're doing a lot of give and take, right? You're swinging your blade, you're charging forward, you're going back, you're dodging, you're defending. But that's really a discussion for combat later. Right now we want to deal with how you would resolve that opportunity, and it is with dice. Now, like a lot of games, when you want to take up dice, you create a dice pool in this kind of game. Not a single dice. It's not like D&D where you just pick up a die 20. No, this is more like, yes, Legend of the Five Rings or other AAG games, or also World of Darkness games, or Shadowrun, or a wide variety of games where you build a pool of dice. So let's say you've got an action you want to take. You want to hit a guy, right? So you're going to need to know how many dice you're going to roll. Boom. So I've grabbed like 5 here, and you just roll them. Now, of course, they're just numbers on the thing. How do you know if you've succeeded or not at the task? Well, when you decide how many dice you have to roll, you also have to decide how many you're going to keep. You're going to add all these dice up. This isn't like World of Darkness or Shadowrun where a certain number means a success and then you count successes. Going those extra steps, I don't see a need for it. Just do some simple math in your head. Although there's one thing you should always know. Dice like this one that rolled a 10, those dice shout. Now, in some games, they'll say other things, like, for example, they explode. But that's not really keeping in the idea of Hachigoku. The idea that they shout like a samurai is much more evocative of the feeling we're going for here. So this is a bonsai die, because it shouts bonsai, and it wants to go again. So, you get a 10, grab it again, roll it. Jesus, okay. Roll it again. It'll keep doing it. Jesus. Okay, roll it again. Okay. This technically means that this single die adds up to a 38. That's all technically one die. Wow. I didn't roll this over and over again either for the camera. That's just the way it ended up. Okay. But when you roll this dice, you also have to decide how many you keep. So, let's say that you only kept 3. We'll explain why you only keep 3 in a moment. But let's just say you only keep 3. Okay. Normally you want to keep your highest die. Okay, so this one die here is a 38, so let's keep it, because you almost always want to roll high. Technically, you have a target number to beat and you want to roll high. And then so we want to take our next highest, which would be the 8 and the 7. Okay, so 38 plus 15, that's 53. That's a good roll for just a 5 keep 3. That's a really good roll. You probably normally won't have that good a roll, by the way. Now, the idea behind what you roll and what you get to actually keep are predicated on the idea that you essentially have potential and power. Now, the number of dice you roll, that's your potential. Your power is how much you can actually leverage that potential, right? So typically, this will mean that you have skills as your potential. And your elements, earth, wind, fire, water, and void, these are your power. How much of that potential you can bring to bear. So in other games like D&D, you have various stats, right? You have 6 in D&D, you know, strength, constitution, dexterity, charisma, wisdom, and intelligence. And then in this game, these are all represented by your elemental forces. Well, your elemental forces determine how much of this you can leverage. So let's say typically you want to hit somebody with your sword. Well, okay, so how many dice would you need? Let's say your skill at Kenjutsu, the sword skill, is 5. That's 5 dice. And your fire in this case is 3. 3 dice. Like I said before, 5 keep 3. Roll 5 dice, you only count 3 of them. Your bonsai dice all count as one single die. Doesn't mean individual bonsai die, by the way. If you rolled 2 separate 10s on your first roll, each of those would shout, and you could keep, say you only could keep 1 die. You would keep whichever one managed to accumulate the most. Fairly straightforward. So the dice you roll, your pool of dice, and the dice you keep. Normally we will abbreviate that in this kind of formula right here, like say 5 keep 3. And when you need to roll a skill keeping some kind of elemental force, or maybe your element, or your honor, or your virtue, or whatever keeping elemental force, or possibly something else, whatever it might be, it'll be written like this, because you can't really write it conveniently, this keep this. So don't be confused by the slash, it's not a division. So in addition to your potential and your power, you need to also know the difficulty you're working with. Now this is related to the target numbers. For instance, I said you roll these dice, you add them up. Well, what does that tell you? That doesn't necessarily tell you whether you succeed or fail or how that works. No, you need to go to an extra bit. Every time you roll, you're trying to hit a target number. This is important. You're trying to hit the target number, not just beat the target number. That's why it's a target number. Now, 3 kinds of target numbers. An active target number, a passive target number, and a simple target number. Start at the bottom. Simple target number is just 10. 10. Always 10. That might sound easy, especially when rolling, say, 5 keep 3 on die 10s. But to build back up, an active TN means that you're actively acting against somebody else and they are setting the TN with their own roll. These are also, you can call them opposed rolls, or even contested rolls. I might variously call them different things in the book once it gets solidified, but I mean, it doesn't really make much of a difference. So, let's say that you're involved in a push and pull with another guy. And we'll say skill's not even involved here. You've got an earth of 4. The other guy's got an earth of 3. Okay, well, the red dice will be you, and these purple dice will be the other guy. So, he sets the target number, which in this case is 12. You, with your keeping all of them because you're just rolling earth, keep earth. Whew. Nice, yeah, you got it. 8, 16, 20. 20 will definitely beat his 12. So you have met and exceeded his target number. But let's pause for a moment for that, because passive TN. Now, that was an active TN because he's actively trying to resist you. The key thing in knowing if it's an active TN or a passive TN is the consciousness of the resistance. Say in this case, they know the two of you are having a titanic struggle, trying to push one another back and forth. But let's say you're running down the stairs and there's a guy who just happens to be in the way. He has no idea you're coming. He doesn't care really if you go past him, but he is technically in the way. Okay, now you want to get past him. This would be the same thing as an Earth Keep Earth roll, but this time he doesn't get to actively defend. His defense would instead be his Earth times 5. Another character's passive TN is almost always going to be 5 times some element or skill or other numerical trait that they have. So in this case, we said his Earth was 3. Okay, he doesn't know you're coming. Earth of 3. Target number is now a 15. 5 times 3. Score! You did it! 19. Good job. Now, it's sometimes important to know whether you have an active or passive defense. Your usual defense in combat, for instance, will be a passive defense, your water times 5. Although, often you can also then spend an action to try and actively defend, in which case you'd make a roll. Usually keeping your water, maybe keeping something else. There's a lot of combat rules involved in that. But that's the basic how of the way. Another way that it's important to know is key things like, say, using stealth, or more often, since you were a honorable samurai, I'm sure, using stealth against you. And if you have no reason to know that someone's using stealth, well, then it would be a passive defense. If you're actively searching for somebody using stealth, then it would be an active thing. So you wouldn't actually ever say, I roll stealth to like be in a stealth mode. You do it to actually say, okay, I'm being stealthy. Cool. Do I need to roll for that? No. However, there are some guards. Okay, I want to sneak past the guards by climbing over the thing. Right on. Now you have to make a stealth roll. The guards don't know you're coming, but they are on guard. So there's a passive target number. It's not a simple TN, it's a passive TN. And let's say in this case they're void, since void is the perception and being alert, times 5. Okay, now, let's say something had made a noise. They're expecting an attack. They've been tipped off for some reason. Now it becomes an active TN. See how that works? Investigation, to question people and look for evidence, could work the same way. If you're just looking for evidence, that would be a passive TN. Unless, of course, someone actually actively was trying to hide the evidence. Active. Questioning people who don't really care what the answers are, they just giving you the truth, or they just want to go home or whatever, passive TN. If they're actively trying to lie because it was against their best interest for you to find out, boom, active TN. Simple TN covers everything else. So anything that isn't actively trying to act against you, climbing a wall, running a certain distance, these are all considered simple TNs. But before you think they're all easy because they're just 10, now we bring back difficulty. Some games gives you, say, static bonuses or static subtractions when you're worried about the difficulty of a certain thing. Now, in some ways, difficulty might already seem covered by the active and passive TNs, but these are still just a baseline kind of thing. We need something to cover when it's more or less difficult, and perhaps even where it's more or less difficult by how skilled the person is. Yes, that's on top of how much their potential dice might be for a roll. And that's where difficulties come back into play. Okay, so the first thing you need to know about difficulty levels is that the average difficulty of a roll is just average. No bells and whistles added there, and you don't gain any or lose any dice. Now, if something's easier than average, we go from simple, easy, mundane. And these give you more dice to roll, bonuses to your dice. With a +1 keep 0, this means you add 1 dice, but you don't keep any more. A +2 keep 0, or it exponentially increases to a +4 keep 0. Now, if it's more difficult than normal, you actually lose dice on your roll. On the same basis, you lose to the dice you roll, not to the dice you keep. And these have a level of moderate, hard, heroic, and legendary. In the beginning, you'll get -1 keep 0 dice, then -2 keep 0, then -4 keep 0, and then -8 keep 0. Now, the difficulty levels actually do extend beyond this. It can be more difficult than the legendary. It can be easier than mundane. And once you get to that level, you just keep doing 4 dice. Either +4 dice or -4 dice. It doesn't continue to exponentially increase at that point. You just get silly. And of course, another major difficulty modifier for you is that there may be situational difficulties. Darkness, storms, the earthquake is going on, there's fire all around you and a building is falling. These kind of things also make it more difficult to do rolls that otherwise you normally would do. So we've covered your potential, we've covered your power, and we've covered the difficulty. The last thing we need to talk about is those target numbers can be raised voluntarily by you. Now, some games also have tried to play with the difficulties by giving them artificial or inflated target number raisings. I've chosen to not do this. Almost every bonus and penalty you get goes straight to your dice, so that it's a dynamic penalty or bonus rather than a static one. Now, sometimes there are static penalties and bonuses, but these are very few and far between, and mostly they're going to come from having specializations called aspects in your skills. Don't worry about that now, but I've tried to really keep them to a minimum.
They can't be that stupid, can they?
Always bet on stupidity.
History is made by stupid people. Clever people wouldn't even try.